What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Filip Latocha, and today we are talking about the Crystal Lake Half Marathon, how my race went, some of the results, the good, the bad, the ugly, and, just how it's shaping up in my Chicago Marathon training plan. So before we get into it, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you're subscribed watching content. Thanks so much. Love you guys a lot. Let's get into it. So, if you've been following me on Strava, you kind of already know some of the results here, but for those who don't follow me on Strava or Instagram, we're just going to go over everything probably from the top and just really break it all down. So, I'll give you guys my PRs for historical races. So, I don't remember the exact seconds on it, but the last time I ran a half marathon race was in 2019, and it was the Rock and Roll Half Marathon, where I'm pretty sure I ran like an hour 34, hour 35. It was not a good race. Weather conditions were terrible. I bonked effectively during that race, and I was personally not ready to run in like a Vaporfly Next Percent when the shoe came out. The best half marathon time I've ever run in for a race was probably in 2018 then. And I believe at that point I would have run like an hour 30, hour 31, something around that range. But my fastest half marathon of all time, I think, was during the Chicago Marathon last year, where I think I ran an hour 29. So that's kind of for reference, how my half marathon has always been. It's the first race I've ever like officially run as a road race, and it's kind of had its ups and downs. But today I'm proud to announce that I do have, in fact, a half marathon PR today, where I ran an hour 26 and 30 seconds. So actually, in a half marathon, I've cleared almost 3+ minutes off my PR and have just had a really good race overall. So for this particular race, I ran, again, an hour 26, 30 seconds, which is about 6 minutes and 36 seconds per mile. And I placed 8th overall on this bracket. And now let's kind of just talk about the bracket in summary. The guy who won the race ran an hour 24 and change. So basically that means everyone in our top 10 finishers was like a very close pack in order to be anywhere from 2.5 to 3 minutes apart from the leader. So that's kind of a big deal, which meant that at some point during our race, it was anyone's race, and just whoever had the gall with it all to either break at certain points of the course or just start off fresh ultimately won the race. So I'll kind of tell you how I went from, starting off in a better position and then dropping to 8th, but how that kind of all circulated, because there was, I guess, a smart conservative decision here that I took. So race starts, of course, it's the pre-race. I've had, some pre-workout to kind of just kick it off. Not much movement in the stomach, just whatever I ate last night pretty much just stuck, which was like pizza, pasta, and like Italian sausage. Just kind of like a classic go-to for carbohydrates. And, it's kind of just pre-race. I woke up with a bit of what felt like nerve, I guess, pressure in my left ankle, and I was thinking that I may have like crushed something along the way, and there was just some weird sensation there. It wasn't painful at the time, but I did use the Theragun, this one here, the night before the race, just to kind of feel it out and kind of break whatever was kind of going on there. So the morning of the race, not too bad in that area, so I felt comfortable continuing to race. And yeah, so the race just kind of starts off, and basically what happens, as you know, most of these races do start off kind of chaotic. You can see who the lead group and the back group is going to be almost immediately. And what happens is, probably like 5 minutes into the race, after we clear like maybe the first half mile, maybe the first mile of the race in particular, the guy who ultimately finishes the race in first place has already taken off. He's like busting what is definitely a 6:05 pace. And I'm now with the group that's running what feels like a 6:40 pace. And I come to the decision of, do I run with the slower group and just try to run my B goal, which is to basically do an hour 30 or better? Or do I risk it for the biscuit and send it up and try to win this thing? And as you can guess, I'm 12,000 IQ. I decide with the latter. So I go try to chase this guy down, and for the first mile and a half of the race after that, I'm basically toe-to-toe with him. I know he's going pretty fast. I see that I'm kind of like in and out chasing him, but also really kind of sticking it with him. I got some confidence being able to stay behind him, have him kind of do a little bit of the work here and there. But by the time we get to like mile 2, my watch says we're kicking off 6:05 per mile, maybe even said like 6:02, so almost sub 6. And I'm thinking at this point, okay, we're 2 miles into this race. We're about to run sub 6 per mile. This is not what I signed up for. I mean, I could try to run this kind of race, but in my mind, I'm thinking, listen, this is not a good long-term strategy when it comes to the Chicago Marathon training, because I want to be able to run a 6:52 or better for 26.2 miles. So I need to practice that particular strategy rather than trying to, blow up during a half marathon and just suffer for, whatever distance my body cannot hold. So at mile 2.5 to about, I think, the 5K mark, I let him go, and now I'm pushing about like 6:26 pace, and this guy is still blasting like, 6 minutes per mile. So the gap between me and first place is now pretty much creating. But the back group is slowly starting to inch at me. So at about, I would say, I think it was about mile 7 or 8, maybe even 9 at this point, that back group finally caught up to me on the race. And by the way, this whole time, there's a lot of twists and turns on this course, as I've mentioned in my previous video, so it's very easy to get lost. I definitely applaud the volunteers, the police, and like the race organizers for making this course as maneuverable as possible, because without like having like orange cones or like tape in the right places, that'd be a very difficult course to follow. But it's a very fun course. I will definitely add that there's like a lot of different terrain we kind of cross. We go into like this park that has park gravel. We go through like this one particular cul-de-sac. We move into like this other one. And it's like just basically, it almost feels like an adventure road race. And it's very hard to get something like that when you're running through the city of Chicago, because most of it is just like 80% concrete jungle. You know what I mean? So this particular race was just fun in the sense that there was a lot to explore on that front. So of course, like at this point, 3rd, 4th, and 5th place, they're running together, and they catch me, and we're kind of running as a group for like half a mile. But it's obvious that the guy who ultimately finishes 2nd place, I call him Pirate Guy because he had like a pirate on his singlet. He starts really kicking it at this point, and he's breaking the 2 guys that were following him, including me. And at this point, like, the race is starting to stretch. Like, the rubber band has snapped, and we are all beginning to spread out. Now, it's probably also worth noting that at this point in time, I'm visibly feeling myself dropping to 6:40, 6:50 pace to more of like this marathon pace. And I thought to myself something my coach said, which is that if the course is flat, don't fall asleep on your pace, because it's very easy to get trapped on a flat course to start running a little bit slower. And I think I caught myself for a moment saying, hey, am I sleeping on my pace, or am I trying to keep this like Chicago Marathon conservative pace? And I think the latter became true ultimately, because I know at mile 10, when we get on the North Prairie Trail, one of our big trail systems out here, and we go north back to the finish line, what happens is that there's a headwind, and it's starting to like really slow us down a lot. And I catch myself almost running a 7 minute per mile split, and I'm thinking, okay, that's too slow. Let's try to push this to at least 6:52 or 6:48, one or the other that I can manage. And 6:48 is a fairly tolerable, like, long-term pace for me. Not like perfect marathon pace, but it's like long-term where I can sustain it. So I do end up running 6:48 for a few splits, and that ends up working fairly well once we get out of the headwind, and we're like basically mile 11 and a half, mile 12, which things start getting a little bit worse here, because now I'm effectively in, I think, 5th or 6th place. And then, of course, 2 of the other guys who were bunched together, they passed me up too. And now I'm thinking, okay, I went from 2nd place to 8th place. How much worse is this going to get? But also, in the back of my mind, what hits is that this is not about place at this point, because I'm looking at my watch and I've already calculated that I can run an hour 26, hour 27. So, in a way, it feels like I kind of am no longer racing the field in a tactical kind of way. What's happening now is I'm trying to race the clock, and I think that's what the ultimate goal of this race was supposed to be from the start. And yeah, you know, we fast forward to the very end of the race, and I do run my hour 26:30, and I'm very happy with it, but I am quite beat up, but not blown up, because if I'm blown up, that means I push too hard, and it's going to, you know, create consequences later down the line for me when we come to, like, running the next couple of days. But I am beat up because, you know, it is a half marathon. It's the first time I've raced a half marathon in a long time, and yeah, I have an hour 26:30, and like my confidence leading into the Chicago Marathon, as we get into this topic now, is much higher than it was the day before. Because of course I'm thinking here, you know, I haven't run a half marathon in so long in terms of a race. I'm kind of nervous. I don't know if I'm going to be able to break sub 130 if like my ankle is sore, if I'm like mentally not there. But to run an hour 26 with like, you know, positive splits in this particular case is a good sign of things to come if I can keep it cool and keep it relaxed for like the first half of the marathon. So if I can run it like an hour 28, an hour 29 per example, and be able to sustain that for the second half of the marathon, the Boston qualifier is mine. Like, I'm going to do it. So there was a lot to learn from this particular race, and I am super happy that despite taking 8th place and being like 2 minutes away from the leader ultimately, that I'm in good shape for the Chicago Marathon. And it's only going to get a little bit better from here if I can make the right tactical training pieces. Of course, the next major crucial run to watch out for in my race block is going to be the Fox Valley 20 miler, which I have signed up for. That 20 miler is going to determine a lot, and it's kind of a hilly course, kind of got some other things going on it, but if I can run that race in like 2:20 or like 2:15, that's like a really good sign, actually. That means going into the Chicago Marathon, it's very likely that I will run my Boston qualifier if I'm mentally all there and like there's no injuries or issues moving into the race. So that's kind of you know, the story of the Crystal Lake Half Marathon. Overall, super happy with it. I love that course. I would run it again. And yeah, despite the fact that, you know, if I just pushed a little bit more at different sections of the race, I could have had a higher podium position. At the end of the day, like the second half of the race when I started racing a little bit smarter, the podium didn't matter. It just mattered that I ran the sub 130. So I reached my A goal, which was to run better than 130 and PR in the half marathon. The S goal would have been to win, and there was maybe some opportunities where winning this half marathon could have been possible if the training was correct, but it's okay. It's a half marathon. I didn't expect myself to be in a position to win, but I didn't also expect myself to be in a position to actually really drive the pace at the very beginning with the guy who ultimately won the race. So yeah, lots of good stuff today, and I am pretty exhausted. I haven't been able to eat for a couple of hours now just because, you know, my body is still kind of readjusting. My stomach got flipped inside out running this marathon, or this half marathon. So yeah, some adjustment period right now. I'm able to like snack on a few things, just kind of drink some coffee, kind of get, you know, the bowels moving. But yeah, it was a good day. Very happy with this half marathon. Fortunate that I could run it the way I did. Fortunate to feel as streamlined as I did running the way I did. And yeah, more good things to come. But for now, I need some rest. I gotta edit this video. So thanks again for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next one.